How does consciousness emerge out of matter or physical stuff? This notion of emergence is philosophically quite complicated. It is easily said that the mental emerges out of the physical if the physical is arranged in a certain complex way. For example, in the way an animal brain is configured. So if matter is configured in that complex way, mind emerges. But this notion of emergence is simply a metaphor. It doesn't explain anything, and it's not even philosophically precise. There are at least three different notions of emergence we have to look at. The simplest one, or the most simple one, is so-called weak emergence. That is the case if something new emerges in nature, but this new that emerges can be completely explained out of the forces and interaction of something that is already known at a deeper level, lower level in nature, so that the novelty can be fully reductively explained. A case might be water and liquidity and water molecules. A particular water molecule is not liquid. But if you add many water molecules together, lump them together, then you have a liquid, and the property of liquidity, or is a liquid, emerges. So the individual molecule is not liquid, doesn't have the property of being a liquid, but liquidity emerges when many of those molecules are located in close proximity. So liquidity is really a new property which doesn't exist at the lower level but emerges at the higher level. Is this a mystery? No, not at all. We can fully understand and reductively explain when we look at the interactions, even at the quantum mechanical level, of the interactions between the hydrogen atoms and the molecules. There are certain hydrogen bridges that are being built that glue the different molecules together so they stick together and form a liquid. That's something we have to explore scientifically, but it can be explained. And it is impossible that there be a world in which H2O molecules have exactly the same properties as in ours, but if you put them together, there's no liquid. So there's a necessary connection between those lower level properties and the emerging higher level properties. That's the easy case, weak emergence. There is a more difficult case, it's often called strong emergence. That is the case when the whole is more than the sum of its parts. So we might think that what I do, how I behave, how I act, cannot fully be explained by looking at the interactions of the molecules or even atoms that make up my body. Even if you would know all the molecules and atoms in my body, you could not predict exactly what my next move, the next move of me as a person or as a body, as a living animal would be. Because there are higher level properties like my wishes and my desires, my intentions, my free choices, that cannot be reductively explained by looking just at those lower level physical properties of mine, like brain structures. If that's the case, then there are emergent new higher level individuals that have a downward causation back to the lower levels. They are not completely different than the lower levels. They might also be simply physical. So the lower level is physical and the highest level is also physical. But if this higher level has new causal forces that cannot be reduced to the causal forces at the lowest level, then we have the strong emergence of something really new that cannot be explained by looking simply at the interaction at the lowest level. The third notion of emergence is an even stronger one. It's sometimes called radical emergence, others call it super strong emergence. And this is if not only the whole is more than the sum of its parts, that here is the idea that something could arise out of a completely different ontological realm. For example, let's assume that there are two ontological realms. The spatio-temporal realm of things that are in space and time, and then the abstract realm of things that are not in space and time. In the abstract realm, there would be like numbers, relations, concepts, ideas, propositions. Those are not in space and time. You cannot tell their age or their weight or their length or width. On the other hand, there are physical things that are in space and time. Now imagine somebody would claim that if you take entities just from the abstract realm, like the number 3, the number pi, and the idea of a triangle, and you arrange them in a very complex way, then out of this arrangement of merely abstract entities, a concrete entity, like the sweater I'm wearing right now, emerges. Many philosophers would argue that this is not comprehensible. How could out of something merely abstract, even if configured in a complex way, how could something concrete and spatio-temporal emerge out of something merely abstract, being outside of space and time? Those two realms are so distinct that an entity in one cannot emerge from an entity in the other, or several entities in the other. And that's exactly the problem we have with the mind, mental entities, consciousness. How could, out of a completely mindless world in which there is no consciousness, not even a very primitive, extremely primitive precursor form of consciousness, if there's nothing like this in this world, how could all of a sudden, if you arrange these material and completely mindless entities, out of this emerge a conscious being? That seems to be utterly incomprehensible, and it can of course be claimed that this happens, but we cannot understand what the modus operandi is, how here emergence works. In the case of weak emergence, it was easy to understand. Here, understanding breaks down completely. And that's why some philosophers argue that panpsychism is a way out, because in panpsychism, super strong or radical emergence is never required, because there is already something, even in a very primitive way, in a proto way, some kind of consciousness at the very lowest level of the universe, the levels of atoms and molecules. And so there is never radical emergence. There's always simply weak emergence, or in the case of other forms of panpsychism, there might also be strong emergence. But there is never this philosophically extremely problematic form of super strong or radical emergence.